Day 18. Wow, only 1 week until Christmas Day. Make the most of it, give as much as you can, love everybody, and make it the merriest Christmas for those around you. We are going to read a story today called The Littlest Orphan. The littlest orphan gazed into the face of the Christ baby who hung guilt framed and smiling above the mantel shelf. The mantel was dark, made of a black mottled marble that suggested tombstones, and the long room, despite its rows of neat white beds, gave an impression of darkness too. But the picture above the mantel sparkled and scintillated and threw off an aura of sheer happiness. Even the neat in memorandum card tacked to the wall directly under it could not detract from its joy. All of Rose's babyhood, all of unspoiled laughter, all of the beginnings of life were in that picture, and the littlest orphan sensed it, even though he did not quite understand. The matron was coming down to the room with many wreaths, perhaps a dozen of them, braceleting her thin arm. The wreaths were just a trifle dusty. Their imitation holly leaves spoke plaintively of successive years of hard usage, but it was only 2 days before Christmas. The Board of Trustees, coming for the entertainment on Christmas Eve, never arrived until the early winter dusk had settled down. The littlest orphan, staring up at the picture, did not hear the matron's approaching footsteps. "John," she said, and the frost had made such pretty lacework upon the window pane wrought havoc with her voice. "John, what are you doing here?" The littlest orphan answered after the manner of all small boy children. "Nothin'," he said. John wasn't supposed to be in the dormitory at that hour of the day, but the picture of the Christ baby drew him, offering comfort to his lonely soul. At just 5 years old, he was the smallest and youngest orphan. He never knew his mother, having come to this asylum when just a baby. The picture offered peace in his loneliness. But now he was there against the rules, and the matron told him to see the teacher, Miss Mace, and to tell her that he was going to write 5 pages as punishment for his infraction, which he did. Loneliness with fear wrapped itself around the littlest orphan's heart, and he couldn't get away from it. He dreamt of a mother to wrap her arms around him. That night, snuggled in his bed in the very cold dormitory, he tried to sleep. All the other children were asleep. He crawled out of bed, and in the darkness he made his way to where he knew the picture of the Christ baby was. His plan was to hold the picture and gain the warmth that he knew he could get from it. He carried a table over and climbed up on it, but still could not reach the picture above the mantel. So he climbed on the mantel and grasped the picture. In walked the matron on her final rounds and discovered the littlest orphan there. "John," she said, "you are a bad boy. Come down at once." With a step, he obeyed, but falling, he struck the table and rolling with it and the Christ baby's splintering picture into the darkness. He lay in bed all the next day, bandaged and wounded in body and heart. The trustees came, and so did Mrs. Benchley, the donor of the picture, given in memory of her little boy. All the other children sang for the visitors, but the littlest orphan remained in bed until the matron came, jerked aside the covers, and said, "Sick or not, you've got to come downstairs. Mrs. Benchley wants to see you, the boy who broke her son's memorial picture." Trembling, he dressed and followed the matron into the assembly room, where the lights were blinding and the Christmas tree was a blaze of glory. As the children sang again, the matron approached the lady. "This is John, Mrs. Benchley," she said, "the child who broke the picture." As the children... Oh, wait. Would she strike him? He shut his eyes. Then suddenly a voice came, a voice so soft that somehow he could almost feel the velvet texture of it. "Poor child," said the voice. "He's frightened, and ill, too. Come here, John. I won't hurt you, dear." Opening his eyes incredulously, the littlest orphan stared past the matron into the sort of face small children dream about. The littlest orphan went forward without hesitation. Something about this lady was reminiscent of the Christ baby. Rudely, the voice of the matron broke in. "I have warned the children," she said, "not to disturb anything." Last evening, before they retired, John deliberately disobeyed, and the picture is ruined in consequence. What do you think we have better do about this, Mrs. Benchley? I think, she said gently, that I'll ask you to leave us. I would like to talk with John, alone. With that, she lifted the littlest orphan into her lap. I know, she said, that you didn't mean to break the Christ baby. Oh, no, ma'am, I didn't mean to break the Christ baby. The woman's arms were about him. They tightened suddenly. You're so young, she said. You're such a mite of a thing. I doubt if you could understand why I had the picture made, why I gave it to the home here to be hung in the dormitory. My little son was all that I had after my husband died, and his nursery, it was such a pretty room, had a Christ child picture on the wall, and my boy always loved the picture. And so when he left, her voice faltered, I had an artist copy it. I couldn't part with the original, and then I had it sent to a place where there would be many small boys who would enjoy it as my son had always. Her voice broke. The littlest orphan stared in surprise. Could it be that she too was lonesome and afraid? I loved a Christ baby, he said simply. I can't believe that you destroyed the picture purposely, no matter what she may think. Glancing at the matron half a room away, John dear, did you mean to spoil the gift that I gave in my little boy's name? Oh, I'm sure you didn't. All day long the littlest orphan had lived in fear and agony of soul. All day long he had known pain, physical pain, and the pain of suspense. Suddenly he buried his face in the lady's neck. He had never known before that there was a place in ladies' necks just made for tiny heads, and tears came. Choked by sobs, he spoke. No'm, he sobbed, I didn't mean to. It was only because I was cold and lonesome, and the bed was big, and all the rest was asleep, and the Christ baby always looked so pink and cuddled close. He burrowed his head deeper into the neck, so that I wouldn't be cold anymore, or lonesome anymore. The lady's arms tightened about the littlest orphan's body until the pressure almost hurt, but it was a nice sort of hurt. It shocked her somehow to feel the thinness of that body, and her tears fell, quite unrestrained, upon the littlest orphan's bandaged head. And then all at once she bent over, and her lips pressed ever so tenderly upon the place where his cheek almost met her ear. Not to be cold, she whispered, more to herself than to the littlest orphan, or lonesome any more, to have the nursery opened again, and the sound of tiny feet in the empty rooms, to have the Christ child smiling down upon a sleeping little boy, to kiss bruises away again, not to be lonesome any more, or cold. Suddenly she tilted back the littlest orphan's head and was looking deep, deep into his bewildered eyes. John, she said, and his name sounded so different when she said it, how would you like to come away from here and live in my house with me? How would you like to be my little boy? A silence had crept over the other end of the room. One of the trustees, who wore a clerical collar, had mounted the platform. He was reading from the Bible that visiting ministers read from each week. His voice ran, resonant and rich as an organ, through the room. For unto us a child is born, he read. Unto us a son is given. The littlest orphan, with a sigh of utter happiness, crowded closer into the arms that held him. And it was Christmas Eve. And a happy Christmas Eve it was. I guess that's probably all what we want. Just not to feel cold, not to feel lonesome, to know that we are loved. So I hope that you will let someone know this Christmas that they are loved.